Well, hello everybody. This is Jeannie again from Historic Sotterley with the big picture. And I have my air traffic. It wasn't raining when I was standing here waiting, but now it's sprinkling. So wave to whoever's flying over. That is a joke around here. It was totally quiet and you could hear the birds, but now I'm talking, so there's air traffic. Great. We love you at PAX and the Hollywood Airport and all of that. We love you. Yeah, that's a standing joke here that something always goes by when I'm trying to talk. So welcome back and thanks. I'll just run down the procedures for what to expect if you haven't joined us before. So this is interactive. You're welcome to comment, say hello, talk to each other. This is being recorded, so if you need to come back later, that is fine. You can go in and out, or if you started late, go back and see it. We're going on a tour of the inside of the slave cabin, but I thought I'd go to it from outside, so I will hurry this up. At the end of this, we will sit in this slave cabin and just have some quiet reflection. So I won't be talking the entire time. When there's no air traffic, there's a lot of neat sounds going on. At Sotterley, we're working in overdrive, trying to get some online and virtual programming out there, so bear with us. And remember all your favorite nonprofits, including historical places like Sotterley and their partnering organizations at this time, because it's really hard to maintain when your funding is iffy, because we can't really have guests right now and visitors. So a lot of these changes are going to be good, and we're going to keep some of this and get rid of some of the old thinking, hopefully. So I don't like reinventing wheels, so you only have one link for a resource today that my pals Jane and Catherine Humphreys, Jane Bachman and Catherine Humphreys will share with you. I want to give a shout out to one of our partners, St. Mary's College of Maryland Library and their archives, and special thanks to Kent Randall, archivist at the college. He helps us out so much, and they will provide you with the link. And it's called The Landscape of Slavery, and it's St. Mary's County and Southern Maryland specific. So I thought if you don't have some of these already, that would be helpful for you. So I don't need any notes from now on, so I'm really happy about that. I don't have to wear my glasses. Yay. So I'm standing in front of our Middle Passage port marker. Sotterley, as you know, was a Middle Passage site where one of 5 in Maryland, where the owner, James Bowles, at the time of what became known as Sotterley, was an agent for the Royal African Company, and we have documentation of at least one, and I know there's more than one, but at least one with his name on it, that he ordered, enslaved, captured Africans from West Africa, and the ship landed here in 1720. So this is one of our partners too, the Middle Passage Ceremonies and Port Markers Project, and there is a Maryland branch also. The 2 Anns, love you, and if you're part of another organization, a partnering organization, or whatever organization you're with, you're welcome to shout them out too on this program. So that's perfectly fine. We're all about partnerships. We can't do anything in a bubble, can we? We need partners. We need help. I tell people every day I can't be an expert on everything, and I don't even try. So here is the marker that you can visit. We're just past the 19th century slave cabin. I still hear air traffic right now, but if you look out, the Patuxent is right past that tree line, and we're going to begin walking. So I've got a contraption that's supposed to keep this level. So we'll see. So I'm going to continue talking, but we're going to start walking down. And this is what the museum calls the rolling road, but it was actually part of Wharf Road before all the road systems got changed in the early 20th century. The real rolling road, as far as I'm concerned, is where the big ravine is. A lot of these 18th century roads became ravines, and there's examples of that, like at London Town in Edgewater. Their 18th century road is now a big ditch, is a big ravine that goes to the river. So this is the same thing. So the barn is just up the hill. The proposed gravesite and some archaeology is up that way. This is where the old wharf road used to go, okay? But it got changed because our owner in 1910 didn't like all the traffic coming by here. So basically it's very simple. I'm walking toward the slave cabin. My helicopter's still here. Do you see the helicopter? Wave. Wave at the helicopter. It's hovering. Hi. I never get a break. Hi. Okay. So, they're probably enjoying the scenery too. So here is, if you can see that, I hope you can. You see where that tree with the beautiful white blossoms are? There's a little house behind there that is called the Barber Scriber House. That is a house that was built for James Scriber and his family, and then also the Barber family lived in it. But we, as Sotterley, I say we, I mean Sotterley does not own that property anymore, but it's still an important building, and someday we would like to somehow get that restored and saved. It's an important part of history here too. As you can see where I am, I'm on the riverside of the manor house, and the blue coat is just covering up my stuff, so I'm sorry about that. Let me walk over here because I want you to see some of the pollinators. I have pet bees out here. I have a bumblebee that I call my guard bee. He's my buddy. We do standoffs all the time. But I just wanted you to see some of the beautiful flowers here, and some of the things growing up. That's all fine. That's all good for pollination. This is a honey locust tree. And when Michael Twitty visited us one time, he said there's some significance with the honey locust tree. Does anybody know about that story? If you do, share it, because like I said, I can't be an expert on anything. I can't remember quite what he said. Something about there's a song or a poem or something about in African American history about the honey locust. So I'll let you all experts at home figure that one out for me. So we're actually going to keep walking because I want to enter the house, the slave cabin, from the other side. Can you all see? I hope you can. And hear me. I still have air traffic. I saw a cardinal this morning. Oh, the wildlife is, I love springtime because you think it can't get any bleaker, and then spring comes. I love that. So you can see the ravine down here. So when a visitor comes, this is really supposed to be the entrance, and there's a sign up here kind of explaining the exhibit that's inside. This cabin was built between 1830 and 50. It is the only original slave cabin that survives at Sotterley. Probably it survives for a couple of reasons. There were still people living in our various slave quarter in 1910. In this particular one, in 1910, on the census, her name was Nanny Williams, and her and her grandchildren were living in this slave cabin, this former slave cabin by then. And she's known around here. You see it in oral histories and things. They called her Aunt Nanny Williams. And you experts can explain what that aunt and uncle thing is, okay? Basically, it's what white people would call African Americans. Instead of saying sir and Mrs. or Miss, they would say aunt and uncle. They weren't related to you, but that's what they did. So, sidebar. So, original. This has been redone. So there's a concrete foundation on it now, but there used to be stones, similar to one that got torn down closer to the manor house in 1910. I have pictures of that. And you can see the beams out here used to support the whole structure. That's an African way of architecture that was brought over. So a lot of things are brought over and kept from the continent. So watch your head. This shell here, really, people ask me, what does this mean? It was my way of trying to warn people to duck when they go in. Just I want to alert people because I've already bumped my head this morning. If you're not thinking about it consciously, you will bump your head because the ceilings are low. And no, it wasn't because people were shorter back then. No, 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 no. Yeah, there was no code, remember, and the lower the doorway, it keeps your heat in. Okay, it's about heat and air. That's what it's about. It's not about short or tall. You can't explain me or George Washington if you have the theory that everybody was shorter then. Maybe by an inch or so on average, but that's pretty much a myth. So we're going to walk in. We're going to duck. Out here they did have a French drain too. So one thing that we concentrate on is three things, and we want the visitors to see this. So resistance. So a lot of times we forget that even though people did not choose to run off, that did not mean that they did not resist their enslavement. There are other ways to resist, and that is hard for some people to get. Well, why would they stay? Well, there's lots of reasons, and every person's reasons are different. So this exhibit is based on the oral traditions of Agnes Kane Callum and everything she left us, and other research, and trying to put things, just a representation of what it might have looked like when people actually inhabited this space during 19th century slavery here at Sotterley. So archaeology has been done, so some of the things that are in here are based on that. Like there was a root cellar, but there's not anymore, but I have a lid there to mimic that. You see the chimney used for cooking and for heat. Mainly you're doing your cooking outside, especially in hot weather. The chinking on the slave cabin, they would take out the chinking made out of mud, oyster shell, hog's hair, whatever they could get, and they would take a lot of that out during the summer months and then replace it in the fall to get ready for the cold winter. And yes, winters did get cold. Even people that are still living today remember when the Patuxent River was frozen over. I have not been here to witness any of that, but it used to happen. So it may happen again. I don't know, but I haven't seen it. But there are people that can remember that. So cold, cold, cold in the winter, hot, hot, hot in the summer. So we're remembering their resistance. So the closed fist. I had one of our signage person that helps us out a lot, and I'll remember his name in a minute. I apologize. Help me out, Jane and Catherine. I had him make these drawings out of the concept. So, and then passing their culture. So culture is passed from generation to generation. So the open hand with the child's hand in it. And then someone in working with a tool that is ingenuity. So to survive slavery, you had to do all of those things. So this explains, on this particular sign, it explains Catholic traditions at home. The Canes were practiced Catholicism, as many enslaved did. Remember Maryland, the Jesuits in Maryland owned enslaved, and Georgetown and St. Mary's County, Georgetown University and St. Mary's County have a common history here, and you can go read that if you want. Sundays sometimes were a day off, quote unquote, for the enslaved, but not if you, like Frank Kane, who was Hillary and Alice, Mariah Kane's youngest son. Mariah was Hillary's first wife. He was a baby when he came to Sotterley, when his mother was purchased and brought to Sotterley. But he would be driving the master, who then was Dr. Walter Hanson Stone Briscoe, to church and to his house calls and everything like that. So people like that had to cook or drive the master or whatever usually had to work, when they didn't get days off, basically. They didn't get much time off. So the Kanes, Hillary, of course, the patriarch of this family was owned by the neighbor, and his wife and both wives and children were owned by the Briscoe family. So that cross ownership happens to several families. The Edwards, the Kanes, of course, had that going back and forth. There were a lot of reasons for that, but I won't get into everything right now. You can't experience Sotterley in 45 minutes. So when we reopen our exhibits right now, we're keeping them closed just for safety precautions. Notice that these stairs here and the panes of glass, that was added after emancipation. So before that, if you'll see over here, you have a ladder stair. So there was a ladder stair over here on this corner, and then there was a ladder stair over on this corner. And that mostly the older children would be sleeping upstairs, and the adults and babies would be sleeping downstairs. So also, the Kanes were a musical family, so we have some representation of some things they might have made. They liked music, and they would have decorated things and things that were discarded by the mistress of the house, they would have reused. This one talks about Hillary's second wife, Elsa Bond. So Mariah died about 4 or 5 years after she came to Sotterley, and his second wife was Elsa. And she had many children. It is from Agnes's oral tradition and history that Hillary was a plasterer, and he was hired out, but he did stay here sometimes, and that he made his wife a bedstead. So I've seen in pictures, old pictures of the slave cabin, they've had some, I guess a best intentioned attempt to furnish the slave cabin with real beds. But for this purpose, I just requested this simple one that was no bigger than it could hold me. There's no twin bed. There's no code like that. Even for the inside, people ask, well, why are the beds so short? Well, there's no queen, and most people slept sitting up. So this is what I requested, and it shows the bedding. So if you were lucky, you had some tick fabric and something to stuff it with. You used reused castaway blanket. She's got a little little basket crib here, and maybe some place for her toddler maybe to sleep on the ground. You'll notice that there's a lot of I have some rosaries hanging, some simplest ones I could find on the walls to represent their culture of their religious beliefs. And then I have some things hanging. Hillary Kane was evidently basically a doctor for the enslaved. He knew about all the herbs to use for sickness, and this is something that I always get comments. I've gotten more comments about this statement here, and it helps me know that I'm kind of on the right track. So Alice Elsa repairs clothes. Of course, the children are going around basically almost naked. You don't start getting real clothes or fabric to make real clothes for yourself maybe once or twice a year, and no shoes basically unless you make homemade shoes, especially for the children. I've got more air traffic, sorry. I mentioned this about she's made a cradle for her infant, and her child has been sick, so a necklace of herbs is made. This is for medicinal and spiritual purposes to protect the child from harm. I've gotten more comments about that of people that come and visit here and say, hey, you know what? My grandmother always had herbs out. She always had an herb for everything. And one person even said he remembers, or she remembers, having her grandmother or her mother make an herb necklace for her when she was sick. And this was somebody that was probably younger than me that remembers it. So this definitely is passed down. And share with each other some of your experiences, please. Because I get that all the time when people see that, that is actually something that was passed down. So a lot of these have questions. I want people to reflect. The way I feel about the slave cabin is I think about it like you would visit, say, the Vietnam Wall. How does everybody behave visiting the Vietnam Wall? Is it a party? Not really. Is there some quiet talking between family members? Of course there is. But the slave cabin to me is like that. This is a sacred space. So that's the way I like to see it treated, and that's the way I view it. It's a sacred space. So let me know your thoughts on that, but that's my opinion. So we're going to turn around a minute. So I have an interactive here. Try to get interactive. So this is for children, basically, because it's down low. But it's for children to kind of sort. They used everything. So it's what is junk and what is to be thrown away and what is to be kept. And this is about the food waste. So rations of corn and fatty pork. So fatback. We're going over here to the table in just a second. And the kettle for the evening meal. Food was gathered. Food was trapped. The ration every week was not enough to sustain, so they had to be very... my airplanes, my helicopters, love them. So they had to be, just a second, just sit here a second, I'll wait for it to pass. So they have to use, and of course the fish and the out of the brackish water too, crabs and those kinds of things are a sustenance. They're poor man's food at that time, believe it or not. So sweet potatoes. So we'll go over there and look at that closer in a minute, but. And some of it is, they wouldn't probably have eggs unless they were given permission or basically took. I won't say steal, I'll say confiscated. But they're trying to survive. 1 egg a day for a child helps its brain develop. Did you know that? So I can see why they would want some eggs every once in a while. It's enough protein for 1 day for a child to have his brain develop correctly. So whether they confiscated or they had a friend in the kitchen that gave them things. That's another form of resistance because, of course, the master and mistress are keeping close eye on their supply. So West African cooking traditions. So I have something around here about crabs, oysters, and Johnny cakes, corn pone, fried and pork fat or baked. Just that everything that most things that we eat today in America have some basis in African American foodways. And a lot of times we call it Southern cooking, but really most of it, and you all can give me some examples if you want to. So this signage here, so it talks about the chinking, supplementing your diet. But it's a reminder too, it's that even at home, the fear that your child, your wife or husband could be sold away was real. Even Hillary and Elsa, both skilled slaves, were still considered property along with their children. This constant fear was used to try to control the enslaved population. With a large family, Hillary Kane is less likely to run than a single younger enslaved man. So there's your choices. Some would argue that, oh well, if it was so bad they would have run. No, not necessarily. That doesn't mean it wasn't bad. That just means that was their choice. They're individuals, remember? Okay, let's always remember that. So a constant fear. So this is the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Persons authorized to execute the process to be issued by such commissioner for the arrest and detention of fugitives from service or labor shall also be entitled to a fee of $5 each for each person he or they may arrest and take before any commissioner. So when Hillary was staying here, he probably didn't have a bed per se because he wasn't here every day. So he was traveling around the neighborhoods being hired out by Dr. Briscoe. So he might have just, taken a plank of wood and put a rock under it and just to keep his head off the floor. So he probably would not have had regular bed clothes here, as my mom calls them, bed clothes. So always the three, resistance, ingenuity, and culture. Okay? So let's go exploring here. We're going to go behind the scenes a little bit. I'm going to go look at this table. So this is just a sampling and a smattering. And of course I can't put anything real in here. We'll get eaten by rodents, so I can't do that. Berries, some bird eggs, a real chicken egg. So that is going to be probably confiscated somehow. Some fatback. You can still buy fatback in the store, so take your kids in there sometime when you can and show them where the fatback is. And oysters, of course. Any kind of greens, turnips, persimmons, anything wild growing, that's going to be eaten. If you know where your mushrooms are or anything like that, that's going to be used. Of course, fish, some blue crab in season when they're out there, and you're going to live off of anything you can get. But think about this too, that if you're an enslaved child at Sotterley during this time, by the time you're 8 years old, you're probably working a 14-hour day. Okay? You're probably working a 14-hour day. So here's the table. I'm trying to get it to where you can see it. Here's the table. So here's the stuff on it. So I hope you can see okay. This was kind of an experiment too. I don't promise anything or anything can happen really. So I hope you did your assignment last week. The assignment was to write a letter to yourself, your younger self, and give them some advice. And here comes some more air traffic. So one of the highlights of my writing was that, one of my advice is don't be so afraid of people pleasing, because people pleasing can get you into trouble. And I don't mean you can't be pleasant, but sometimes we're worried about what other people think too much. So that would be one thing. I hope you came up with some things you might tell your younger self. So this week, I would just like you to ponder and think about all of the things we talked about today. And can you see the fireplace? Hope so. All the things that we talked about today. And I'm going to sit out here. I'm going to set the camera down in the doorway. And I am just going to let it sit. Let me make sure and then you're going to see the door outside. You see the door? Okay, I think you can see it now without much glare. Let me try. Okay. Yeah. So you see the door, and I'm just going to set it here. And let's just be quiet and let's just think about this for a little while, okay? I'm going to just leave it on for a few minutes, and then I'll say goodbye now, because I'm not coming back after we have our quiet reflection time. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next week. Take care. I'll see you next week, everybody.